All right. Welcome to the September 26, 2024 Minnetonka School Board Study Session. First on the agenda would be citizen input. I don't believe we have anybody here to speak, but if you are, raise your hand. Okay. Just so that the board's aware, you do have a few carry-in items in front of you that we'll refer to both during the study session and during the special meeting later. Correction. Special meeting ones are up on the podium. The ones that you have in front of you are for the study session. So first up on the agenda tonight, we have an update on the MCA results. Superintendent Law?
Madam Chair, members of the board, the state of Minnesota on an annual basis requires all school districts to provide students the opportunity to take the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments. These are assessments that get more rigorous by grade level. They're given to students in grades 3 through 8 in math and reading, in grades 5 and 8 in science, and once during their high school career. Minnetonka has, and most school districts, have a practice of providing an update on how our students performed on the MCA results. These assessments were given in the spring, but schools don't get public data to share until late August, and they don't get comparative data to share until that time. So this is really, after we've received those results, this is the first chance we've had to share those results publicly. Tonight, our Director of Assessment, Dr. Riga, is going to be here to share some information on our results. Mr. Riga.
Thank you, Superintendent Law, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'll show you some highlights from last spring's MCA results, some notable highlights followed by some metro area comparisons, and then also we'll see how the schools did individually, and I'll share some trends and some of my thoughts on the data. So first of all, our schools have performed very strongly when we compare to metro area school districts as well. So we have our benchmark districts that we compare ourselves to. And compared to those districts, we were first in reading, first in science, second in math. That's a very familiar place for our district to be in, both before and after COVID. And specifically in reading, we experienced a higher rate of growth compared to the state in 5 of the 7 grade levels. 3 of our 6 elementary schools, including Tonka Online, grades 3 through 5, saw very strong increases in reading. And at MME and Tonka Online 6-8, Tonka Online 10, and our high school students also had solid growth in reading compared to their same grade counterparts from the year before. And in math, 4th through 6th graders ranked first compared to other metro area comparable school districts. In science, grade 8, and our high school students saw an increase in the percentage of students meeting and exceeding. So our high school students that take it must have taken a biology class before they take the MCAs. So it's not a specific grade level all the time. Sometimes there's seniors in there as well. So compared to other metro area districts, we can see Minnetonka highlighted in blue at specific grade levels and compared to how we ranked the previous year. So for example, we have grades 3, 4, and 5 represented on this slide. And in 3rd grade in 2023, we were ranked 3rd, and we can see in 3rd grade in 2024, we were also ranked 3rd. We've been 5th, we've been 6th, we've kind of bounced around there, but definitely a very solid performance for our 3rd graders, specifically in reading, when this is their first year of explicit instruction with an English language teacher. So phenomenal when compared to all students in English. And 4th grade ranked 3rd last year, and the prior year, also in 2023. We could see where we rank compared to the other 2 schools that performed ahead of us. And then 5th graders ranked 2nd, and they ranked 2nd the prior year also. It's very consistent. And like we talk about with staff, I talk about with staff, when we use MCA results, we look at them over time, and we're looking for that consistent performance over time. Sometimes we have a year where we bump up at a particular grade level or down. But when we see consistent results like that, that's encouraging about our academic program. And with secondary, we have grades 6, 7, 8, and then in 10th grade, that's when students take the reading, we could see comparisons. In 6th grade in 2024, we were ranked first, so in our last test, and then we were ranked first the prior year in 2023. And 7th grade, we were ranked 4th 2 years in a row as well. And in 8th grade, we were ranked first. And ranked third also in 10th grade, but very solid performances in reading. And in math, last year, third was ranked fourth, and fourth was ranked first, and fifth was ranked third. And it's important just to look at it by grade level like this, because in the first slide, I shared that we were ranked second overall in the metro area. We were like 4/10 behind the top ranked. But you can see how the grade levels performed and how we looked in the previous years as well. Very consistent performances when we're looking at percent proficiency within a couple of percentage points in the last couple of years. And then math, our rankings for the secondary level, we can see that we were first in 6th grade and 8th grade and third and 7th grade, and also second at grade 11. Also important for us to see how we're performing against the state standards. And earlier I had shared ACT results, and we can see how our high school students are performing on ACT in math, and we can see now with MCAs in math how we're doing. Very strong performances there. And then in science, so we were first in the metro area. So in 5th grade we were second, 8th grade first, and then at the high school we were second as well. So very solid science performances. When we look specifically at each of the schools, I show a couple of things on this slide. The percentages that are in bold are where we had an increase from the prior year. So it's, in this case, for reading, if we're looking at a combination of grades 3 through 5 at the elementary level, so we put them all together, and we can see that, for example, at Deep Haven, it shows 70.2% of students were proficient. And so the last 2 years, we've seen gains, so from 66 to 68.7 and then 70.2. But right above that, we show Clear Springs, and I show that highlighted in yellow because that's an area where we've seen 2 years where there's been a decrease in the percentage. Now, is it a large decrease? I mean, from 72.3 in 2022 to 69.8, that's not considered a statistically significant decrease, but it's worth noting. But really, in the grand scheme of things, 69.8% proficient, and even in 2021, it's 70.5, and everything in between. It's not too far. It's not really fluctuating that much. But we could see all the areas in bold as increases compared to the grade levels before, and that's really solid performances. And no other place was there a decrease for 2 years. That's what we're hoping to see. And this is a breakdown for Tonka Online, grades 3 through 10 in reading. So you can see the left column there, second from the left, is the number of test takers. A lot of students opt out of testing that are in the Tonka Online program, mainly because they can't take the test online, whereas the NWEA test, they can take that online, and they do that. All of the students take it online there. But they need to come in to the district office to take that test, so that's why that happens. So we provide that means, but you'll also see fluctuating scores because there's very few students. And you can see the students who tested versus the students who were eligible to test. And some of them, it's quite disparate. Like 7th grade, 11 students were eligible, but only 1 tested. And math results, we can see, I'll take that one off first. We can see lots of bold across the elementary schools. Only one of the elementary schools showed a decrease from the year before, but they had the highest percentage of students proficient. I think they had one grade level where it was 100% that I reported on. Proficient in our Chinese immersion program, actually. We can see, again, Tonka Online where they performed, and then both MME and MMW performing very solidly and consistent with each other. So regardless of which middle school, our students are performing very solidly. And you can see where the high school was with a drop-off in math, whereas reported a significant increase in reading, but there was also a significant decrease in math. And we can see over the years where they have. So that was their lowest in the 4-year span at 63.4%. And that's where the Tonka Online number is. So just a wide variety. We had 22 students take the math test out of 89 that were eligible to take the test. And as the students get older, they typically fewer of them will come in to take the test. We do have more elementary students come in to take it. And science. So we were number one in the metro comparable area for science, and that's great compared to the other districts, but compared to ourselves, we can see in yellow, I'll take that off, we'll see in yellow that those are areas that had 2 years of a decrease. So Clear Springs was at 77% 2 years ago, and then in 2024, 69.8%. And then Deep Haven, there's a 20% discrepancy there, and they dropped 10% each of those years. So that's something that we're going to need to check into. And also, it's not really that we can compare that to our NWA. Like I would say with math and reading, we can compare that. In science, we just have a specific population at the elementary that takes it. So it's not really that comparison. But this is measuring against the state standard, so we want to be checking on that. And otherwise, we can see where our high school was, where they rebounded after a year where they showed a drop. So, but looking over 4 years, it's been very consistent at the high school in our science performance at 77.6%. And that's where we were with our Tonka online students. 12 of the 59 students came into test. So some trends, our third graders ranked third in the metro compared to our benchmark comparable districts, and our fourth and fifth graders ranked first in reading. And it's nice to see that no grade level ranked lower than third. And especially with all of the professional learning that we're doing in the area of literacy, we would expect that to continue to happen. And our Hispanic or Latino students outperformed their counterparts by 32.9%. And our Black or African American students by 11.1% compared to the same group statewide. And in math, we can see we were ranked first. That's reiterating what I said earlier, 0.4 behind the highest performing district. And Black or African American students were 9.9% higher in proficiency compared to their same group statewide. And Hispanic or Latino students in math outperformed their counterparts by 37.6%. And that's pretty consistent with over the years. It was about 1% or 2% difference. So we're maintaining that level. And in science, we ranked first in the metro area compared to other districts, with fifth grade ranking second, eighth ranking third, and that's where the high school was. I've had questions about this, so I thought I would add this part in. We just received word today, so I just added this. This wasn't in the report, but this just gives you an idea of when the new tests will be coming out. I'm really curious specifically about the science test based on what I just shared on the data where we are. But I know we've been doing work in the district with science. Typically when you get a new test, you'll see a drop off. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens with the new test this year and what I'm reporting back next fall. And we see reading that is coming the year after. That'll be really good timing for us because it'll be a good test of what we've been doing with our staff over a couple of years. And then anticipated math is in 27, 28. So I'll report on those and the differences between the tests when they provide that information. So that's all I have for you.
Thanks, Dr. Riga. Questions, comments? Patrick?
Dr. Riga, can you just talk a little bit how these results get used? I'm particularly thinking about some of those places where the trend was down for two years in a row, or like how do our principals or educators dig into that data to try and find something to do about it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, today and several days before and in the coming days, principals will be reaching out to me about their data because they're setting goals also for their building. And that's a chance for me to share with them, even if it's an NWA goal, that's a chance for me to share how they're doing overall in that subject area and if that's a goal worth doing based on MCAs, NWAs, and we also have FastBridge, which is another reading measure. So it starts with the principals and that goal setting process for them. And that's one way that they get it, but they'll get it specifically from me that way.
And then on some of these where you had highlighted one of the science ones, and I forget which one it was, where it's gone down two years in a row, but then I noticed that the prior year was like a 60, so it was like a 60, then it jumped up to 77, and it went back down. Is there a lot of variability in these, and or is it, I mean, I wonder about the ones with the low number of test takers, but I'm just wondering overall.
Well, typically we've been very consistent. That science one I highlighted, though, it did show where we had 2 schools drop significantly on the science, so we need to look into why that happened. Because typically our MCAs should be predictable because our assessments are aligned to our essential learnings, which are a condensed version of our state standards, so that should all be aligning. It's a little bit different than with NWA, where that test asks questions off of the grade level, both above and below. But this one, we have specific information and we can align to. So that is a little bit something that we're not used to see that kind of a swing at those 2 schools. So that is something we do need to look at, for sure. And with the new test, we'll have new assessments in science at the classroom level, and we're going to have to rewrite science classroom assessments, realign those to essential learnings, and make sure, and then hopefully that will align to the MCAs with that new test.
Thank you.
I had kind of a piggyback question. How often do they redo the tests on average? Is it like a 10-year cycle, or is there not a predictable pattern?
I mean, they try to stay with a pattern as far as science, then reading, then math, like that way. I think in the last test, I have it in the report. But it's the science. I want to say it was about 8 or 9 years ago, the science test. So in that range, because I was here when the science test was new, that MCA 3 came out. So that, and I've been here 12 years. So I think it's about 8 or 9 years ago when that one came out.
I just found myself wondering if it was in somewhat related to the shift to the next generation science standards, and that the test was misaligned to what the teachers are being asked to teach.
Shouldn't be, because they go through an extensive process with test writing, and they have teachers help with that, and then they do standard setting after that to make sure that they have the right score, the proficiency levels, and they do that with a committee. So there's a lot of checks and balances throughout that process. That's why the test doesn't come out right away when the new standards come out. It takes some time to go through those committees. So I would not, once in a while, like we had seen 5th grade math drop off significantly, and that was happening statewide. So that would tell me misalignment with the test. But typically that wouldn't be the case.
So statewide, they haven't seen the drop in science?
Not like we saw with
Okay.
that with 2 schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Any other questions, discussion? Sally?
So in the board packet, you explained a little bit about how the rigor of the test accelerates, so that we see this phenomenon where students may be performing quite strongly in 3rd grade, but then we see at the high school level a significant reduction in that percentage. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I didn't quite grasp it.
The questions do get progressively harder as they move up. So it's not like this perfect staircase where that's why also if a student has a scale score, a 3rd grader has a scale score of 350, for example, because 300s are 3rd grade, you wouldn't say in 4th grade they should get a 450. It's not an exact science where they just go up 100 scale score points. And so we do see that drop off over the years where it just gets progressively harder. The other thing that impacts students, especially at high school, is they have choices they make in the spring. So there is a human element to that. Why sometimes we'll see ACT, wow, we're performing here on that reading test, but why aren't we here on that reading test for MCA or something? And AP and IB, that sort of a thing. But mainly it's as they increase it, it's expected to get harder. We'll see those proficiency levels drop.
Yeah, and that kind of makes me think of another thing that stood out to me is that even at the highest performing levels, this is not unique to our district, that, 80% or 70-some%, and I'm thinking, wow, I would have expected proficiency to be closer to 90 maybe or something.
Yeah, and it's hard because proficiency and not proficient doesn't mean a student like can read or cannot read. It just means related to those standards and those questions. That's how they performed. But it's also why we spend some time, and we spend so much of that report comparing to other metro area districts, so we can see it's all relative.
Thank you.
Dan?
Yeah, thank you for all this. I think the thing that I always look for and the thing that's always just super encouraging and affirming is Minnetonka's performance relative to the metro and relative to the state. We're always doing an excellent job and always doing right by our students. That being said, I mean, the achievement gap, I know, between our white and AAPI students and our other groups of students, I know it's something everyone's aware of, and I know it's something you folks are focused on. I'm just curious that achievement gap, not within our building, but, you know, our white and AAPI students versus how much better are they doing compared to the rest of the state versus our Black and Native American populations relative to those populations in the rest of the state? And are they catching up over time and improving over time relative to, you know, the amount of time they've spent in our district? Not an answer I'm expecting at the table, just curious.
Yeah, I do. Specifically, I don't have the data on me right now, but we do measure that for a report when we were doing with the world's best workforce data, where we specifically measure that gap and goals related to how we're going to close that gap. Just not to that, I don't have that data in front of me yet, but that'll be coming as well.
Superintendent Law?
So this question was asked a couple different ways, and I'll just weigh in on the fact that this is a point-in-time data point. And this board had a lengthy conversation about some students don't test well, and some students don't test well on the day that they test. And so some of the proficiency can be attributed to the fact that we have some students that just get to this point in time and either it's a bad day or every test is a bad test. So it's one data point that we use along with our NWEA test and our FastBridge test to measure our number one priority is, are students growing? And are we intervening with students to get them up to proficient and to make sure they're growing? So a building principal, when we talk about the school that had 2 years of dropping, will look at, and remember at the elementary school, every new test sample is 60% of the kids that tested before, or 66%, because your fifth graders have left and you have a new group of third graders. So it isn't 100% of the kids. Middle school is 66%. High school is a brand new group every year. So we also look at cohorts of kids and are they moving, and then the difficulty of the test gets thrown in there. But what we're really doing with students that we hope is closing the achievement gap is identifying students that aren't proficient, that aren't growing as expected, and really in order, if you're not proficient, you need to be exceeding expected growth to catch up to proficiency, and depending on how far behind, it might be a couple years on that trajectory to catch back up. And then we're making sure frequently, as we do interventions, are you responding to this intervention and catching up, or do we need to try something else? So our strategy to close the gap has been, who isn't proficient? Do we have the right interventions, and are they responding, or do we need to escalate the amount of time we're spending with them, or reduce the number of people that are working with them till we get to a spot where we're growing? And principals are working on this with Dr. Riga's guidance. It goes to a grade level of teachers. We look at the students in that grade level who aren't proficient. We look at our fall assessments on FastBridge to say, where are these students starting, and then who are we intervening with based on those data points? And then we check mid-year on some, and then we get to the spring. But this is a single data point, and it's a point in time. But it does start the year with schools knowing who should we be looking at as we group students for interventions, if that helps. And given the fact that along with the groups of kids not being the same groups of every kids, we had a 4% withdrawal rate this year. The students we're working with in the same grade level aren't the same students every year, so there's a little bit of variation there too. I hope that helps.
That made me think of a question. Would it be possible, I know, sorry about that. Would it be possible to pull that longitudinal data, like to find a group of students and start at third grade and follow them through 6, 8, and 11 and look and see if that gap is closing? Like, would that be something that we could do? We'd have to drop out kids who left or came new, obviously, but if we had the same group of students, would that show us anything?
Well, what we hope it shows us, and what you can see in our data Dr. Riga, can you go back to the early slide on proficiency in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade? Farther back,
That's reading.
Sure. So what we like to see here is 68% proficient in 3rd grade, 71% proficient, and 82%. And while these are not the same groups of kids, the scores at grade level are consistent. And so what we're seeing is we are getting more students towards proficiency as grades pass. So, that 82% in 5th grade is give or take a percentage point from the previous year, meaning our 4th graders are generally getting a pretty good jump to 5th grade in proficiency, and 3rd grade is getting a jump to 4th grade. We know from data that we've shared earlier with the board that our 3rd grade students that are in immersion-only programs take a year to catch up, and that's why we see by the time they're in 5th grade, they've caught up and exceeded theirs. So I'm not surprised our 3rd grade numbers aren't at the top because we have students in their first year of English instruction, but they do catch up quickly. So we last spring, you might remember at the board planning session, we shared longitudinal data on reading proficiency. We plan to do something similar again, and we'll dig out how of the group of students we've had since kindergarten, and I think the data we shared showed they have the highest proficiency rate if we've had them since kindergarten, and then every year that we haven't had them, it drops.
And 2 things to add to that. With the NWA report, because we take that in more grade levels, I will share cohort information because sometimes it will be like, oh, that looked like they dropped a little bit when we're just comparing 3rd graders to 3rd graders. But then I'll mention from kindergarten to 1st to 2nd, they met their growth targets every year. This was just the first time that happened. So we're not seeing that when they meet those growth targets. That's also a positive piece. I forgot the other thing I was going to say.
It's okay, there's too many questions. Yeah, I just found myself wondering if we could pull it out specific to the achievement gap that Dan referenced. Like if we could do it for our students of color where there's an achievement gap and just kind of look and see if we are closing it gradually, if we look at the actual same students. Because I think that's one of the challenges in that population is there is more transiency. They come and go from the district. But if we had even if it was a small cohort, we could look and see what their actual performance was and just look and see if we see that growth.
Our data does show the longer any student is with us, the likelier they are to be proficient, but we'll preview like we did a year ago, a similar achievement gap closure report.
I do know what I was going to say related to that. When there are data points where we're like, there was a drop, just like I showed earlier, that's when that conversation with the principal happens, that's where they also provide insight. They might say, they'll tell me, they'll share information about that particular cohort of students, and then I'm also sharing how you can see that cohort of students with the data. But that's a regular part that occurs when we're curious about why there was a drop for some reason. Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much, Dr. Riga. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you. We will move on to the next agenda item, which is a review of the annual report. Superintendent Law?
Madam Chair, members of the board, one of the finest publications that we see in our community is a summary of the success of our staff and students from the previous year. Tonight, Executive Director of Communications, Dr. Jackie Giddy, and her team are going to preview the annual report that summarizes the 2023-2024 school year. Dr. Giddy.
Thank you, Superintendent Law, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is new, so we'll be sharing it, I think just pointing it back and forth. We're always excited to present this report. It's a real joy to work on. It's an all hands on deck effort. Really an opportunity to look at all the different aspects of the school district and to showcase student achievement, to showcase what the district's been working on, to look at everything through the lens of your goals that you've set and how the district has tried to complete those in various ways. And so we'll walk you through the draft that was in front of you today. And so on page, not numbered, but page 0, I think, and my glasses on. That is just the table of contents, just identifying the different areas that we thought were significant and then having a few of our signature photos. We're always excited to share the photos that we take or that we have taken throughout the year. So graduation, a shot of the Vantage Momentum Space, and then one of our feature stories, which is the mural at Excelsior, which was really focused on belonging and connection, which I know several of you attended that. So we'll talk more about that when we get to it. On page 1, that is the superintendent's message, and I'm sure you've all had a chance to look at it. The photo we're excited about too. This was taken last winter in a Groveland second grade classroom, and they were talking about a language arts activity. And Superintendent Law spent a lot of the year interacting with classrooms and with students and teachers and observing what happens in the classroom. So we thought that was really reflective of that work as well and paired nicely with his message. The next page is a great picture of all of you from graduation. Fun to get you all together. That may be the first picture that we have of you all together like that. So we're excited about that. We have the board goals from last year. We wrote them as they were written. We didn't talk here about what was achieved in them because what you'll see in the rest of the publication really shows that. And then at the end, we do have a link to where they can find the current school board goals. The next page, page 3, is a Q&A with School Board Chair Megan Sellinger. Megan, thank you for your time in doing that. She really spent time thinking about what the district's achieved in the goals, what is still left to do, talking a little bit about how you shape your goals for the district and what goes into that thinking, what feedback comes into it, where we have work to do, what opportunities and challenges are ahead, and then what she's looking forward to accomplishing. So it's great to, again, help the school district, and we send this out to all residences in the district and all families, and that's an opportunity for them to get to know all of you as a board and to understand more about how board leadership and the board thinks and where you focus your work. Mary.
All right. The next 2 pages highlight stories of a few of the outstanding academic achievements that our students accomplished in the past year. Honors like these give names and faces to our board goal for excellence in student learning and support. On page 4, you will see the 21 National Merit semifinalists from the class of 2025, as well as the 46 IB diploma graduates from the class of 2024. And on page 5, you will see 2 national caliber achievements highlighted from 2 of our outstanding student leaders at Minnetonka High School. We have an entire section of academic achievement within the Points of Pride, which is featured later in this document. But on page 5, we're able to infuse student voices and perspectives, as we strive to do throughout the report, to really give our community of readers a sense of the impact that educational opportunities make for student experiences and their futures. So on page 5, we have Deepti Pillai, who was one of the 2 students from our state selected as part of the U.S. Youth Senate program this spring. She talks about how this program and her experiences at the high school have inspired her future career plans in public service. She was a student government president during her senior year and also participated in Vantage Public Policy. And then we have Ming Wei, who is one of only 3 Minnesotans selected as a U.S. presidential scholar this spring. She was chosen for her excellence in writing, which you have likely read because she was a leader not only at the high school with the newspaper and literary magazine, but she was an intern on our district communications team, furthering our storytelling and sharing her unique lens. And she's now studying English at Harvard.
Daniel's going to take the next section.
So on page 6, we look at how Minnetonka students are testing ahead of peers. On the left, we talk about the MCA test result, which you all have heard quite a bit about earlier tonight. Our students are ranked first in reading and science and second in math among comparable schools in the Twin Cities metro area. On the right, we highlight students' performance on the NWEA. By the end of elementary school, an average Minnetonka fifth grader is performing at ninth grade level in reading and beyond 12th grade in math, so some great stats across the board. And on page 7, we have a spotlight on our AP students at Minnetonka High School. We have 88.3% of MHS students taking an AP test and scoring at least a 3. 95.1% of Minnetonka High School students who were enrolled in an AP course took an AP exam, which is great. 80.6% of the class of 2024 took at least one AP course in their high school career. And we note that MHS offers 40 unique AP courses last year, so that doesn't even count if they offer the course first and second semester. And at the bottom of the page is a link that will lead parents to a full listing of all students who received an AP Scholar Award in 2024. On the next page, we have our spotlight on graduation. Graduation is such a celebratory experience for our students and families, so we try to include as many great photos as we can of our graduates to go along with the information about where they're headed post-high school, and you can see a selection of those here. If you turn to page 9, we conclude our graduation feature with a fantastic cap shot photo and more stats on our graduates. We noted an uptick in students who are either exploring two-year colleges or going into the workforce or pursuing an apprenticeship. So we made sure to note those stats in addition to our traditional four-year college-bound students and, of course, our students entering the military. I'll turn it back over to Mary.
The article on pages 10 and 11 celebrates the opening of the brand new Vantage Momentum building and the growth and success of these programs that led to this milestone. The story reflects efforts connected to the school board goal of excellence in student learning and support, specifically showing the ways that the Vantage and Momentum programs are expanding to meet student interest and future career opportunities available for them. On page 11, specific aspects of the new building are highlighted in connection to the innovative experiences that they offer for students. So those include the flight simulators within the Aviation Flight Lab. They provide Momentum students with state-of-the-art technology to build skills towards future pilot careers. Dedicated health sciences labs that offer experiences to give students a jump start into the medical field. This year, Health Sciences 2 is the newest Vantage strand, and it was offered to facilitate students' desire for deepened learning in these areas. And then, as you've all been over to the building, you've seen these. The building is filled with breakout spaces for students to connect with each other and with their mentors. Team collaboration is a key component of both Vantage and Momentum, and it's amazing to see it in action when you visit those spaces.
Our next feature, which is on page 12, is about our Superintendent Law's priority initiative to really expand our efforts with security and safety in our buildings and grounds, and hiring a person to oversee security and emergency management was new last fall, and Scott Gerlicher was hired to that. He had 30 years that he brought with him of law enforcement leadership and a different lens that we haven't had, really looking at the district comprehensively and seeing where we could really shore up efforts to improve physical safety and also training. And so worked really closely with our leadership staff, and really this reflecting the goal, your goal of excellence in leadership and organizational support, and really thinking about how we're supporting the safety of our students and staff. And so that work is continuing on into this year. We had a sit down with Scott Gerlicher and talked about what was your role, and what did you focus on this first year? What are you looking at in the years ahead? He does talk about how there's always new technology, and so we think about that too, and we think about what we have and how something pairs with it and where we can improve and still be really fiscally responsible. And so looking forward to what that will bring in the future. And so we really try to give our community a glance at what that priority has looked like and how we've been focused on that. And to the next page, same, of focusing on nutrition services and our new director of nutrition services, who is actually a Minnetonka alumna and also class of 2006, she shared, and that she has been in the nutrition services program, mentored by Jane Bender, who retired this last year, for the last 12 years. And so she's just been an incredible part of our team, and it's exciting to see her in this new role. So we got to talk to her about what she's focused on on. She talked a bit about the Parent Advisory Committee for Nutrition Services and what that work has looked like, and some of the new efforts that they have this year, some of the areas that she's excited to share about and what she's looking forward to in the year ahead. And we know that food is something that is often on our parents' minds. We do hear about that and how we can improve our program. So she's excited to take feedback and keep moving forward. Mary, right?
The next 5 pages provide a spotlight on many of the district's signature programs, sharing both highlights and stats from the past school year, as well as student perspectives on the experiences they've had and the skills they've built in these innovative classes. To quote Dr. Ledoux's words in the story, these are core experiences that not only shape students' academic paths in our district, but also open the horizon of their future goals and possibilities. So on page 15, we start with our immersion program, celebrating the more than 4,600 students who participate between Spanish and Chinese language options. We have reflections from teachers about highlights from the year, and our student quote is from a Chinese immersion 6th grader, reflecting on the impact of her teachers. Page 16 features our Minnetonka Research and Momentum programs. In Minnetonka Research, 87 students participated last year, following their curiosity to develop authentic research projects in a wide range of disciplines. Students qualified to present in regional, state, and international competitions this year, and I think the student quote featured encapsulates so much of that opportunity, that what's important is how you rebound off of failures and mistakes to create success. Momentum, this spotlight shares stories of collaboration in multiple fields, but it has a specific focus on aviation, as last year was the first year it was offered. It includes a quote from the first student to earn his commercial drone license through the program. And we also share about a business partner project in the Mathematics of Home Renovation course. Moving to page 17, we spotlight the Vantage and SAIL programs. In the Vantage section, we particularly recognize the astounding number of community professionals who volunteer to make the program a success, more than 1,200. Connecting with professionals was a highlight mentioned by our feature student as well. And I loved her reflection that the Vantage program has taught her to strive for growth as well as success. Our SAIL section spotlights the way that this program has come to build such strong community partnerships in Minnetonka that foster incredible learning opportunities for students with disabilities. Collaboration with organizations and businesses provide lasting connections for students that can lead to sustained opportunities after they graduate from SAIL. And our featured student is now actually a district employee who is in the Junior Explorers program. I love her words about the impact of SAIL staff, that they believed in her potential even before she was able to see it herself. And page 18 includes our last 2 spotlights on Tonka Online and the Navigator program. The Tonka Online story shares about those robust opportunities that this program provides for elementary, middle, and high school students, particularly new courses offered through the high school program, and our spotlight student sharing about the study skills that she's learned as part of the full-time high school program. And the final spotlight on the district's Navigator program for academically advanced elementary students includes a new project spotlight on a collaboration between Excelsior Navigator students and senior citizen residents that grew out of student interest. And our featured student reflects on teamwork and critical thinking skills as things that he learned within the class.
The next section, the next page is strategic steps, aligning resources to preserve our district of excellence. Often in the annual report, I think for the last several years that I look back at, we did some kind of article on open enrollment, just explaining that to people so that they understood a little bit more about why do we embrace open enrollment, why do we have so many open enrolled families, what's the draw, what is the benefit. And as we looked at this year, we really thought it makes sense to couch that with where we're at, specifically with regard to our finances and how open enrollment has helped over the years, but it alone is not the only thing that we look at when we look at the district's financial picture. And so we wanted to talk about how open enrollment has assisted. We also want to talk about the leveling off a bit of enrollment, and we're seeing that across the state. We do compare to class sizes, so we looked at the Brightworks study. They do a study annually, and we looked at our numbers compared to the Brightworks study for class sizes. These were sizes not from this last school year. It would have been 2 years ago. That's we're usually a year behind on this study, and so we'll have the next numbers this time next year. But our numbers, as you can see, our class sizes consistently stay either at or below the metro average of the school districts that participate in the study. But then, too, we talk about the other levers that are in play when we talk about revenue. It isn't just enrollment. It's also what we get from levies and what legislation can limit for us currently, and how do we work toward that, and what are ways that people get involved to really help in those efforts. So we wanted to put that out broadly to the community. We talked about it a little bit in the school news postcard that went out a week ago, but we want to continue to give people the opportunity to get involved and to partner with us and to learn more about this. So that was the goal with this article this year, and we link back to the financial update webpage to make sure that people know that there's a place where they can continuously see how we're addressing budget shortfall. Big section coming up on district points of pride.
Yes, so the next 4 pages are some of my favorite in the report. Our points of pride showcase the hard work and dedication of our students, staff, and community in such a wide range of fields. As you have read through, I'm sure the achievements felt familiar. This is a compilation of our 23-24 School Board Recognitions Program, which you have all volunteered your time to be part of in the past year. So thank you for your role in making these virtual programs such a success. We hear from our community that they love both the flexibility and of the format and the opportunity to hear student and staff voices included each month. So thank you for your support in celebrating these achievements. On page 20 and 21, we have our academic, activities, and athletics achievements from Points of Pride. Just a note here, in order to be included in the School Board Recognition Program and the Points of Pride, it recognizes groups that have achieved state qualification or above. So on these pages, you can see everywhere from our Math Counts national tournament qualifiers to our first-time Envirothon team national qualifiers and our first-time state qualifier in girls wrestling. There are some historic achievements that are included on the pages for our community to celebrate. And on pages 22 and 23, we have our arts, service, and district and staff honors, from Minnetonka Theater's award-winning productions and state-level student achievements to outstanding fundraising for important causes by both students and staff, like the $23,000 raised for cancer research or the $73,000 generously raised by our staff through the annual employee giving campaign. These amazing things are happening throughout our community, and this article provides just a snapshot of it.
So on page 24, we have our annual update on our outstanding community education program. For the second time in a row, community education was nationally recognized as a Learn Top 10 community. We also wish a fond farewell to Tim Litvin, who retired as Executive Director of Community Education after 20 years of service. Kim Carlson, our new director, started at the end of August. The article also touches on each area that community education serves, such as preschool and ECFE, Explorers Childcare, youth and adult programs, and our amazing community events. The photo that this featured in this article is the Read the Rainbow Initiative, a preschool and ECFE program that paired colors of the rainbow with matching books to engage our youngest learners in reading.
The article on page 25, Dr. Getty talked about during the table of contents, but it is the story of a community-wide effort to build connection and belonging at Excelsior Elementary through the creation of a one-of-a-kind mosaic art piece for the school's front entryway. Principal Jennifer Smazel and her teachers built a lasting reminder for all students, staff, and families about the way that each of our individual contributions connect to create a unique and powerful whole. The mural is an inspiring reminder of the way that we all work together to build a culture of belonging and connection in our schools.
In accordance with Minnesota statutes, pages 26 and 27 feature a summary of the progress that Minnetonka Schools has made at achieving the state's goal of creating the world's best workforce. Teaching and Learning will present a full report in an upcoming meeting, but this gives a summary to all of our families. On page 27 goes through the goals. And these goals for the 2023 to 24 school year were: children are ready for school. All schools submit a local literacy plan, which replaced the third grade reading goal of past years. Closing the achievement gap, which highlights how Minnetonka has closed the distance between white and non-white students in reading and math. And I think these are great stats. I'm going to call them out a little bit, especially since it was mentioned a little bit earlier tonight. So under reading, 76.5% of white students and 73.3% of non-white students met or exceeded proficiency on the MCA 3 reading test. The gap is 3.2%. Of the state's white students who took the MCA 3 in reading, 58.7 were proficient. Of the state's non-white students, 35.2 were proficient. That gap is 23.5%. And for math, 76.4% of white students and 71.1% of non-white students met or exceeded proficiency on the MCA 3 math test. The gap is 5.3%. Of the state's white students who took the MCA 3 in math, 55.5% were proficient. Of the state's non-white students, 28.7% were proficient, and that gap is 26.8%. The last two goals are students graduate and students are ready for college and careers. On page 28 and page 29, we have our annual financial report section. One big call out on page 28 is Minnetonka's efficiency in per pupil spending. Through careful planning, Minnetonka schools spent $657 less per pupil than the state average and $2,629 below the cumulative average of our neighboring districts. We continue with the financial report on page 29, and I want to call out that Minnetonka has again received the Excellence in Financial Reporting Award, its 29th consecutive year receiving this. It is also one of the few districts to receive a AAA bond rating from Moody's.
And then our back cover is a snapshot of a few of the data points from the annual parent survey, which we presented to you in August. So we talk about the number of parents, 96%, that rated the school district as excellent or good. 92% of parents saying the community receives a good value from its investment in public schools. 93% of parents saying they believe their child's school provides a safe learning environment, and et cetera. And then there's a link to the full report. We will show you our 3 cover options for you to choose from, but first we'd really like some feedback if you have it, and any questions for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you, communications team. Questions, comments? Chris?
Or just a comment. A couple comments. It's just an amazing document every year. And you can tell by how you guys present it, the pride that you guys have in putting it together, and really the pride of representing Minnetonka very well. And it shows through. And, to pull all this together takes an army, and you guys don't have an army.
Small but mighty.
And so it's truly amazing compared to, even Fortune 500 companies. This would stand out. And that's why you guys win awards for this document almost every year. And so you should be very proud. It's amazing. It's such a great representation of what we do and culmination of the year. So it's really awesome. And then just a comment, I really like there's so many pieces, but specifically the strategic, instead of the open enrollment. And really, I think that is something could be a standalone thing as we go out. And I'm assuming you guys were looking at that. I mean, that really is a great script for board members or members of the community or case or all of those things. And, I think it would be great obviously it's great for it to be here, but then for it to be continued to use as it goes along with everything else that we're doing to advocate for our legislative. So.
Thank you. On behalf of all of us.
Yes.
So we have a tiny but mighty army. Is that what the conclusion? Any other questions, comments? I noticed a couple just like little typo type things. Do you want us to just share those with you
After the
afterwards?
fact, yep,
Okay.
love it.
It was like a year wrong
Yep.
or something. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Patrick?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for the work on the financial management section. I think it's important to keep our community aware of everything we're doing to try and get the most value for the dollars that they provide for us, and particularly that section on the efficiency with which we are monitoring our spending and trying to do a good job. So I was glad to see that particular call out.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would just say, I think it's amazing to see all of this in one place, right? Because we see reports and we hear all about these things scattered all throughout the year, and we have recognitions at each board meeting, but to see them all like assembled in one place is just such a great demonstration of all the stuff that's going on here that is just amazing. Like, our kids are thriving, even in a time when public schools are struggling and students are struggling coming out of COVID. And this is really a way to kind of compile all the success. And I just really like seeing it. It's really rewarding to think about all the educators out there and all the staff members that are pouring their hearts into these kids. And this is the result. And so I like having it all in one place together like this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, like an awesome testament to all the district employees and parents and volunteers that make this all happen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes. All right. There are three choices. You want to, give them that way. And Daniel, you want to give them that way. And we're going to have you hold up the one that you want. And also, we will show you that, here, I'll show you the last 2 years. So these were the cover of the last 2 years, just so you have that reference as you look at the three options. Okay. Pick your favorite. Is everybody ready? Thumbs up? Yep. Last 2 years. Need one more moment. Okay, ready, everyone? Hold up the one that you like. Oh, wait, let's just do it this way. How many of you would like to see this one? One? How many would like to see this one? 1, 2, 3, 4. How many would like to see this one? 1, 2. This is our winner. And we will be using these other photos in other ways, so they will not be wasted. Oh, fantastic.
I was going to say, I think these are all great. So I hope to see them elsewhere, but I like veering from the parade.
Love it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Also, if you're in the audience and you have a draft of the annual report, please make sure to get it back to Dr. Getty before you leave.
Thank you. Any more? Yep.
All right. Next up tonight, we have a review of the 2024 Pay 2025 preliminary levy. Superintendent Law?
Madam Chair, members of the board, the Minnesota statutes require us to have a board approve a preliminary levy in the month of September. One of the reasons that this work session has been moved to the last week of September is, as Mr. Bourgeois will tell you, we get information up until yesterday for this report as different government agencies provide us feedback. So during the work session tonight, Mr. Bourgeois, the Executive Director of Finance and Operations, will be walking through the preliminary levy, and then later at the special meeting tonight, the board will be asked to certify that levy. Mr. Bourgeois.
Thank you, Superintendent Law. So I'll just start the slideshow here. Just a few background notes. We have several board members who it's their first time through this. The local levy is paid for by the residents of the district. And in our district, we're a little bit different than most others because they have much more commercial and industrial. In our district, basically between residential, homestead, this is numbers from the Property Record Information System of Minnesota, which is the tortured acronym of PRISM that the Department of Revenue has. We are at basically 90% of our levies, of our property value, our property taxpayers are residential homestead and residential non-homestead. And then we have about 6% in commercial industrial and 4% in seasonal recreational. So we have a very heavy residential population in that regard. In commercial, we have 251 commercial parcels, 15 industrial parcels, 4 ag homestead parcels, and 12,948 residential parcels as of the last information that was available for this year. So our levy, we have 9 major levy categories that you see grouped there. And these 9 levies basically make up 94% of the total preliminary levy. So the biggest individual one is our operating referendum revenue. We've had operating referendums in place since the early, late 90s, but very small, and then increased over time. But for fiscal year 26, which is 24 pay 25 levy is for, we're looking at a property tax revenue of $28.2 million, and that's up about just over $1 million from 23 pay 24. That's based on the inflation adjustment that taxpayers approved back in November 6th of 2015, and it went up $63.42. The inflation estimate it's actually an estimate going forward that the Department of Revenue produces, and then it's trued up later. So if inflation would decrease, we'd have to pay some of that $63 back. If inflation was higher, we'd have a makeup levy for the additional amount. Local optional revenue is $724 per pupil. And for our district, this was originally part of the local or the operating referendum. But in 2014 and 2019, the state pulled off a chunk of revenue off of our operating referendum and put it into local optional revenue. At the same time, for all districts that didn't have any, in both of those cases, that didn't have an operating referendum, they got the ability to levy the additional amount. So they got $724 per pupil, and we got $0. But at least in 2014, they actually left the pulled out capacity on the levy formula. And so we were able to use that in 2015 for the next chunk of operating referendum revenue. In 2019, they said, no, we're not going to do that. You were taking the $300 off, so we didn't even have the ability to go back for the $300 they took off like they had done the time before. So, and as you know, we've been working very hard to try to get our operating referendum revenue cap increased going forward. Our technology referendum revenue, technically it's capital projects referendum, but everybody knows it mainly as the technology referendum. It's going to $10,049,000 for the next fiscal year, which is an $808,000 increase. 6.569% of net tax capacity of the district, which basically is a calculation based off the property values. And at the so property values in calendar 23, which is what we're using on this levy in 24, went up 8.1% over 22. The year before, calendar 22 values went up 20.3%. So we actually went from 7.6 million up to 9.2 million, that figure you see there for 23, 24. And just so you can see how those property values have increased. That's not all new construction, most of it's reassessment. There's some new construction. We get about 1%, 1%, some years 1.5%, but usually under 1% to 1% of new property construction in our district. This levy called the equity levy is something that was put in place a couple of decades ago to try to equalize some payments related to districts that were maybe low in revenue. And actually, when I first came to the district in 2007, we were getting well over $1 million, $1.5 million on it. It slowly declined as we had additional operating referendum revenue because it's a calculation of all your revenues, and if you're in the 95th percentile, you get a lower amount. You get a minimum of $50, If you get a little, if you're under the 95th percentile by just a little, you get a little bit more. And of course, if you're under the 95th percentile by a lot, you get a lot. So we've edged up to the 95th percentile over the years. And so some years we float in and out. Last year we got $50 this year, which was a drop from 69. This year we're back up to almost 69. Q-Comp, it's called Q-Comp. It's alternative compensation, but Q-Comp is the acronym for quality compensation for quality teachers. And this is actually pretty steady. It's been funded at $260 per year estimated October enrollment. And the $260 has stayed flat since the implementation of this program. So it's one where we're continuing to have to try to get more out of the same dollar amount. But the local levy is 35% of the total revenue, and the remainder is state aid. Then our operating capital levy, this is the levy portion. Our total revenue is about $2.9 million, which is going up 47%, a whole 47 cents for this year. But it's a two-tiered formula, and the $79 has been fixed since 2011, and when it was increased from $68, which it had been set at $68 from in the early 1990s. I had actually went back and looked that up for something we're doing with for some possible legislative lobbying this year. And the $109 one was actually increased from $100, and it was set at $100 back in the 90s. So that was increased back in 2011 also. But you have a little bit of a factor in there for the age of your building. So our age increased just a tad. Even in spite of the Vantage Momentum building. And so we're levying $1.6 million, but that doesn't give us more total revenue. The total revenue is at that $2.9 million mark. But if you notice there, the state has, over the last 4 years, they've been pushing more of this operating capital levy, which every school district gets, to local levy and funding the rest with state aid, but they've been dropping their state aid portion. So they used to spend, so back in 19 pay 20 for FY21, the state was basically picking up about 64%, and now the state is picking up 42%. So they've used this lever to help balance their budget in some respects and lessen the amount that the state has to pay for this particular levy. Instructional facility, I want to back up on that. Operating capital levy is also something that we've used as we were growing the district. We used the operating capital levy because our capital projects levy could handle most of our technology needs. And so we were able to use our operating capital levy to pay for a lot of the building capacity improvements that we did that allowed us to grow from 7,700 up to the current about 11,200. So that's a chunk of that. And we use about $2 million a year to make the payments on those capacity improvements. Instructional facilities lease levy is about $2.5 million, and that's relatively flat because we are so close to the cap that we can't squeeze another project out of it. Our cap is $2.6 million. The $212 per pupil has been frozen since 2014. If inflation was applied to it, it'd actually be up at $360 a pupil. And that is what we also, the other chunk of revenue that we used to provide. You can see the list of programs there, or our construction that we did there to, again, also help grow the district. So between this levy and operating capital, we used about a $4.5 million revenue stream to leverage up to basically provide $102 million worth of capacity improvements so that the district could grow, so that we could get open enrolled students, so that we would be able to get the additional 24% increase in revenue to local, to resident students that open enrolled students provide after they pay for all of their incremental costs of education. So that produced the virtuous cycle of 18 years of no budget reductions. Our debt service levy is general obligation bonds and everything except one bond payment, which is still from the April 23rd, 1996 referendum. Is the last payment is actually on this levy, and then it'll be paid on February 2nd. But the rest of it is related to our long-term facilities maintenance. We bond for long-term facilities maintenance because we put in long-lived improvements, 20 to 25-year roofs, 30 to 40-year HVAC units, wall tile that will last 50 or 60 years, cabinets that will last 50 or 60 years, that we're replacing things that lasted 50 or 60 years. So we bond for that. And so other than about about $1.4 million of the pay 25. The rest of that is all for long-term facility maintenance. This looks like it's a big jump. The actuality is you can see down below there that we actually, with general obligation bonds, collect 5% more than the payment. That's a state statute. And the reason for that is so that in case there's building delinquencies in the payment, we end up having to, or we have enough money that if there's some delinquent collections, we still make our bond payments. So that helps our bond rating and helps the state's bond rating. But that 5% builds up over time. And so we've been utilizing some of that over the years, the last 3 times that we've used it. 20 paid 21 for FY22, 21 paid 22 for FY23. We did not use it in FY24, but we used 1.4 million last year for this year. So we don't have that another chunk to use. There's a gap in there. It'll start building up again. But part of this $3.1 million is actually $1.4 million. Looks like an increase because we used the buildup of dollars to actually lower the levy a year ago by that much. And then our other post-employment debt service levy is about 1.5 million, and that goes to pay for our other post-employment benefits endowment fund. I wish it was an endowment fund, a trust fund, but we've actually pulled about $20 million out of that fund, and we still have $15 million, basically all of the corpus available, and it pays about $800,000 a year in post-employment retirement benefits for retirees before July 1st, 2001 that were contracted for July 1st, 2001. And that's huge because otherwise we'd be paying for that out of ongoing operational dollars. We also have 13 additional levies that the state has for us. There's more than that, but these are the ones we qualify for. I'm not going to go through all of them individually, but the total of the other levies is about 3.4 million, and that's up about $350,000. The biggest, there's one increase in there is related to the health and safety levy. We have needs to raise it to $150,000 by $150,000. And then we also have it's the first year that we have the District 287 of $42,774 in there. So that's primarily the dollar amount. That's a larger difference. Prior year adjustments are the rest of the levy, $961,000, so they're very low. And 23 paid 24 was 2.5 million, so it's a decrease there. And the thing is one of the things about prior year adjustments is the last 3 years, this is how our prior year adjustments run related to the operating referendum, because the inflation adjustment that was estimated was lower than what actual inflation turned out to be. So in 22-23 for fiscal 24, we picked up the huge inflation increase over the estimate for fiscal year 22. We collected that for FY24, and that was 2.2 million almost. And then for fiscal year 23, the inflation increase was higher than the estimated operating referendum increase, and that was by 1.8 million. So now this year, the inflation increase for last year is just a little bit higher, so we're only picking up 214,000. So, but we actually had the benefit of the 2.2 and the 1.7 million dollars to help balance our budgets in FY23 and FY24, and then also this year for FY25. But we do not have that large of a benefit for next year because inflation has been trending down, right? So our total preliminary levy amount for the first time, it's going to be over $70 million. And this is a preliminary levy. It's the maximum amount that we can levy. And also technically, we're going to be asking you to approve something called the maximum because the Hennepin County, in particular, they're working through abatements and things like that, of that nature. And Department of Ed actually calculates some of the dollars that go in here. And if they come up with an adjustment after you adopt the preliminary levy, if we actually adopted the flat dollar amount, that would be it, and we wouldn't benefit from if there's a higher dollar amount we should be levying. So the board item that resolution that you're going to be approving says that we're asking you to approve the maximum allowed by statute, but it's currently at this level. So, but it's also the maximum amount that you can do. So other than that, in December, when we come up to basically approving the levy for the final levy, you can't approve a dollar amount higher than what that max amount is, which is currently this amount, but you can always lower it if you decide you want to lower it. It's a $4.3 million increase for 6.51%. We are at about 1.8 million of the 2.75 is of the 6.51, it's generated by the voter-approved inflation increase for the operating referendum levy, and then the voter-approved property value increases for the capital projects referendum levy. And then 1.4 million of that increase is actually because we don't have a debt service excess, so we're just levying back at our normal level. So that looks like a 2.13% increase. And then there's a 1.63% increase generated by all those other levy categories that we talked about. And then this last slide, it's not. This assumes it takes last year's estimated taxes for these home values. It increases the dollar amount by 6.51% to show what the estimated amount would be for 24-25. It does not include any reassessments for a property. It does not include if a person has an addition to their house and increases the value of their house. It doesn't include any total property value increases for the district. Those will be run as we get some additional information about all that, and we will have all that information available with actual dollar amounts for the final. But this is just the initial estimate. And so, again, to the extent that if somebody had no reassessment and no other changes to their property, and then the property values have been reassessed in other places, it could be that they would actually see an increase, but a smaller increase than 6.51%. But this is if everybody has just the same assumptions for their property, this is what a 6.51% increase would look like, and I have a typo in there, dang it. Anyway, but so we're looking at $98 annually for a $300,000 home, $164 at a $500,000 home, $238 on a $700,000 home, and $310 on a $900,000 home. So that is the preliminary levy review, and we're going to cover these things in a little less detail, but we're going to cover basically the same set of slides in the session coming up and asking you to approve the preliminary levy so we can send it into the Department of Ed and Hennepin County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bourgeois. Any questions or comments? Superintendent Law?
We can't state this enough. That number of 6.5%, of that, the amount that we can use to pay our ongoing operating expenses, the increase is significantly less than 2%. When you looked at that last slide, the public might read this and say, at 6.5%, that's a lot more money than you say you're getting. Most of this is categorical, aligned to capital projects or long-term facility maintenance or other funding items. Is that correct?
Yes, that is.
Chris?
Just for frame of reference, I live in Minnetonka, so the city is proposing 7.23. Is their levy proposal for the city?
Mm-hmm.
Just compared, public
Sure.
bodies.
Dan?
Am I correct in the only levy that's got like an inflationary increase baked into it is the operating levy? Like the main operating, or do some of the other ones have inflationary increases baked in?
Actually, no. Like for instance, the Q-Comp levy, the safety levy at $36, those have been basically flat for a long period of time. So operating referendum is the only one that's tied to the CPI. And then the capital projects levy is based on any change in property values, which may sort of be with the CPI, but not necessarily. So if it's a hot market and values are going up, property could get reassessed at a higher rate than what the inflation rate is. And so in that case, that's kind of what we have here, because we're looking at an 8% increase in property value, and but the CPI right now is running at somewhere around between 2.7 and 3%.
So I'm curious, like if for our work on the case committee and when we're talking with our legislators in the next legislative session, is there a way to identify all these flat APUs, like for the Q-Comp and everything like that haven't changed over time?
Oh, yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
identify each of those numbers that have just stayed flat, identify the last time that those numbers were increased, and then quantify like where we should be at versus where we are, because that seems like a nice, easy number to put in front of the legislature. And I know, we got a lot of money in the past session for the READ Act and a lot of specific things, but there are a bunch of these things that we rely on that haven't been increased over time. And I think being able to show them those specific lines and how far behind we are would be helpful.
I already did a calculation, actually, we've done it for the last several years, but done a calculation on local optional revenue, which used to be part of the levy, and for us, used to have inflation on it. But local optional revenue is at $724, and it would basically be over 1,000, just right at just a little over $1,000 right now if it was inflation adjusted. So for us, that'd be $276, which would be basically close to about $2.5 to $3 million more, somewhere in that range. It'd be
Yeah.
a lot of money.
Yeah, and then add all those things
Right.
combined.
And if they had just kept us, let's
Yeah.
keep it up with inflation.
Thank you.
And actually, a local levy does not impact the state budget. So all those things are in local levy for us, so.
Patrick?
I just want to piggyback on something that Superintendent Law mentioned, which is that, the operating levy is what, 2% of that 6, or 2 point something percent of that 6.51%. And that's not a choice we're making. That's a mandate. We have a number that we're at, the absolute cap that the legislature will allow us to do. We don't have any choice about reallocating that into a larger percentage. We're maxed out.
That's correct. Yeah, we don't even have the right to try.
Don't let us ask.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Bourgeois. All right, we are going to take a break between now and the beginning of the special meeting. Is 7:20, do we want to aim for 7:40? So we'll aim for 7:40, and we'll move up to the podiums and get ready for the special meeting. Thanks, everybody.